These are the guidelines for our reflection papers. Those will be due by the end of Tuesday of finals week. That date is December 6th. So the end of December 6th. You can turn it in anytime by midnight that day. And we will go here through the guidelines. If you have any questions, there will be time to ask those in class uh, next Tuesday, the 29th. But you could also email me. Um, so this is a reflection paper. Kind of the idea of this is, based on your journals and your social media project from the whole semester, to reflect on that project and to kind of report on what lessons you learned about social media and citizenship from that project. The paper should be 6 to 8 pages, double spaced, in Times New Roman font, standard margins. Again, I try to grade things mostly based on your effort. So if you're kind of having weird margins or really large font or things like that, that will be something that I take off for. If you do use screenshots, as I encouraged you to take throughout the semester, um, please put those at the end and at the end of the essay, and they don't count towards the length. I encourage you to do that, however, because the more detail you give, the better the project will be. Once again, the point of this paper is to use your social media project combined with the class readings to reflect on what lessons you've learned about social media and citizenship. Basically, the question is, what did your project tell you about social media and its projects for enhancing or harming citizenship? I want you to kind of give us two big lessons that you learned from this project. And those lessons might relate to the topic areas we covered in class. For instance, you might say, I learned something about misinformation, or I learned something about polarization or civil discourse by, doing this project. Each of those major lessons, say civil discourse, should be backed up with multiple examples from your project, as well as some of the scholarship that we read in class. So the way I imagine this would be sort of, I learned a lesson about civil discourse. I learned, how nasty the discourse can get on social media. Here's a couple of examples of that happening, in from my social media project, and it just confirms the conclusion from Rasley, who said, dot, 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 insert quote here about the nastiness of discourse online. So again, the focus is your project and what you're learning from that project, but using a little bit of the research to help back up that conclusion as well. These examples from your project should be as specific and detailed as possible. Don't just say things like, people fought a lot, or this post generated a lot of response. Give us details. What did they say? How did they fight? How long did the fight go on? What seemed to trigger them, etc. Just really, try to paint a picture to help me see what you saw in your project. Again, to this end, I think screenshots may be very valuable, right? So you can reference, image number 1 at the end of the essay, image number 2 at the end of the essay. So then I will really be able to see what you saw, especially if there were particular moments or whatever that jumped out to you. If you're looking for kind of a model for how to do this kind of essay, go back to the Rasley reading. The Rasley reading, he's doing exactly what we're doing here, where he tried to become a moderator on his Facebook page, and he, talked about sort of the success and the failures of that, and had good details, and reproduced or posted screenshots of what was going on in those discussions and debates. I do want you to cite at least 3 sources um, into from the class readings into your essay, and incorporate these as support for your major points. But like I was saying, they should be kind of like further backing for the lessons you're outlining, right? So if you're saying, I learned something about misinformation, disinformation, check this out. This one group, even got banned, dot, 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 dot. This just, the further backing, like this sort of, what I learned sort of confirms what Dr. Vide Nathan said. And here's a quote from them. Yeah. For your introduction paragraph or so, you should first of all kind of introduce your social media project. What did you do? What role did you play, etc. Then spell out, here's the 2 lessons that I kind of learned, and then preview your points like you would in any introduction. Um, there should also be a conclusion, and I want you to kind of build up to this conclusion, right? Because I want the focus of the conclusion to be your rules for social media. So throughout the essay, you're saying, reflecting on the social media project, here's the lessons that I learned, here's why I learned them, here's some examples, here's some research to back up those lessons. And based on those lessons and the conclusion, here's what I would recommend, right? Here's the rule that if I were telling all the citizens of the world how to best deal with social media, here's my rule. Here's what I would recommend. So after telling us the lessons, give us your main tips for kind of addressing these issues or addressing these lessons, and then go on to explain why your rule is relevant to and help solve the issues you raised, right? So if you're raising issues about civil discourse or issues about activism and you have a rule, tell us in the conclusion, tell us what that rule is, and then kind of tell us why that rule addresses those issues, or why that rule, why you came up with the rule, why you think that rule would be effective. You should have a bibliography attached at the back of the essay, but that does not count towards the paper length. When I'm saying 6 to 8 pages, that should be exclusively, just content, sentences with your content. I have here kind of like a basic outline of what your essay should look like for your reference. And then down here at the bottom, I have a couple of, guidelines on things that I look for when I'm grading. Again, I try to grade on effort. So if you have a bunch of grammatical or misspellings, then I take off some points. Too short is a big penalty. If it's not too short, but you're kind of repeating yourself a lot, or there's a lot of empty words or filler, then I'll take points off. I do want you to revise this paper. So after you write a draft, go back through and kind of like make sure your organization is good. Make sure you're fixing the grammatical errors. Make sure you're polishing what you said. If it reads like it's a rough draft, then I'll take off some points for that. And then as far as the content of the paper, I'm kind of asking how persuasive and convincing your argument is. Have you done enough to illustrate these lessons? Can I really see them? Have you given me good detail and good examples? Do you have enough research there? Are there sort of like obvious omissions where I might go like, well, what happened then? Or, how aren't you overlooking this? Are your lessons clearly stated and well supported? Is the rule clearly stated and well supported? These are just sort of general, like, did you do the legwork to prove, your points and stuff? All right. Well, that's all we have for today. I hope you have a good break. And if you do have questions, please email me. And if not, I will see you next Tuesday.